Thank you very much for the introduction and welcome all to our panel on 5G, blockchain and smart cities of the future. I'd like to welcome all our panelists. We were all supposed to gather in the studio today, but obviously that's not been possible. But thanks for joining us online, and a warm welcome to everyone who's watching wherever you are. We hope you're staying safe. I'd also like to extend on behalf of all the panelists here a huge thank you to the organizers of this event, this local event in Cambodia, the National Bank of Cambodia, the Association of Banks in Cambodia, and the Cambodia Association of Finance and Technology, who I think we can all agree have done a great job in putting this event together at such short notice and in the current circumstances. I personally am really looking forward to the panel today, as it gives us a brief chance to escape the anxieties and concerns of the present with the COVID-19 pandemic, and it gives us a chance to look into the future, to all use our crystal balls, to look into the future where new technologies will shape our lives, and with all the promises and the challenges that they will bring. But first, though, I'd like to go around our esteemed panelists to introduce themselves before we get into the questions from me and hopefully from our audience at home. Remember, if you do want to share questions to the panelists, you can share them in the comments below, and we will get to them as many as possible. So first of all, going clockwise from on my screen at least. Well, let's do it on the main screen. Let's start with Ian. Ian, would you mind introducing yourself and Cellcard?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Pleasure to be here today. My name's Ian Watson. I'm the CEO of Cellcard, one of the leading telcos here in Cambodia. We're Cambodia's leading operator in terms of digitization and looking at pre-5G. The longest serving operator in Cambodia here for 23 years, and also the only 100% owned Cambodia entity. As well as being the CEO of Cellcard, I'm also division CEO of Royal Group's ICT division, which encompasses Wing, which is the leading mobile payment specialised bank, EasyCom, which is the leading ISP, and CTN CBS, which is the leading TV station for Royal Group. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ian. We're delighted to have you on the panel. Vlad from BRAINCHAin, can you introduce yourself and a bit about your company, please? Don't forget to unmute yourself. Thanks, Vlad.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Hello to the audience. And BRAINCHAin has been created with the vision of making this world a better place through technology. We have been working with in different industries, and we are very excited with diversity and bringing our technical excellency through different channels, from blockchain to automation.
Excellent. Thanks, Vlad. Thanks. We're delighted to have you on the panel. Calum, if you could give us a few words about yourself and GCTISD.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. So my name is Calum. I lead the Smart Cities and Digitalization team at the UNDP Global Center for Tech, Innovation and Sustainable Development. We're based in Singapore, but much of our work is across Sub-Saharan Africa and the wider Asia-Pacific region. Prior to joining UNDP, I did a lot of work around connectivity rollouts, did the kind of last mile and ultra last mile, and also a lot of work in the UK on 5G pilots, exploring blockchain, and also legislation to inform telco rollouts. Lovely to meet you all.
Fantastic, and we're delighted to have you here. I'd like to introduce Mr. Kok Long from iPay88. He's joining us from Kuala Lumpur today. Chan, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kok Long, and I'm one of the co-founder of iPay88. We are a leading payment company in Southeast Asia, and we have a very strong presence in Cambodia. In fact, iPay88 Cambodia is one of the leading payment company and the first non-financial institution that got the license to operate payment solution in Cambodia. And I'm very, very happy to be here to share with you my view about how 5G and payment will impact our life. Looking forward. Thank you so much, Julian.
We're also looking forward to hearing from you, Chan. We'll get back to you with some questions later. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce from ADA, Mr. Sanjid Hossain, who's the Director of Reach and New Products for ADA in Cambodia. Sanjid.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Julian. It has been a great pleasure to be with all of you. So first of all, from ADA, it's an analytics, data and advertising company which provide data and artificial intelligence-based digital media analytics, insight, and creative and marketing solutions for the clients. We are operating in 9 different countries in Southeast Asia and South Asia. We have been the largest tech agency of the whole Asia Pacific region for the last 2 years. So we are excited to be part of here and share our experiences on this panel. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you guys for, we're delighted to have you all on the panel. So I mentioned in my preamble there that we're using this opportunity to look to the future and future technologies which are going to change our lives. But I think the burning question here in Cambodia, we've had all the major telcos, Cellcard, Smart and Metphone, all announcing that they're ready for 5G. We have 5G devices now widely available, 5G enabled devices now widely available in Cambodia. And we do have a public hungry for the latest technology and the promises of 5G. So why do we not yet have a definitive date for 5G rollout? What's holding us back, particularly when you look at neighboring countries like Laos, where they're already piloting 5G networks in downtown Vientiane, for example. Ian, maybe as a representative of one of the telcos here, maybe I can address this to you. What processes do we need to go through to get to the stage where Cambodian consumers with Cellcard, Smart, Metphone or other providers can be able to avail themselves of 5G networks and enjoy all the benefits from them?
From our point of view, it's just the government now. All the telcos are ready. I think some people are a bit unfair. All the telcos have already got 5G base stations up, and we have for a while. And we're going speeds of 2 gigabits per second across the trials. And I know, we speak to Smart and Metphone about the spectrum allocation and everything else. I think what needs to happen is the MPTC, the regulator here, has to decide very quickly in terms of releasing the spectrum for stage 1, which is in the cities. And I saw the preamble of yours, Julian, for, Siem Reap, Phnom Penh, Battambang need 5G spectrum release so we can start rolling out. Device prices have come down, which is always a concern for us when we talking 2 or 3 years ago, especially in Cambodia, where people price affordability sometimes limited, especially in the provinces. The other thing what we have to look out is terms of price. I think, unfortunately, for the telco, unfortunately for consumers, we enjoy the cheapest data in the world. You yourself here, Julian, for $1 you get 10 gigabytes of data. It's crazy. And I think that there has to be a realization as we move towards 5G as a country that the price has got to go up. The other balance of that, and I know a lot of the operators, all 3 of us, have invested a great deal of money in 4G. And, as you drive around Phnom Penh with 3CA, you can get speeds up to 300 megabits per second. And there's always the ultra arguments say, is the country ready for 5G? If you can experience speeds of 300 megabits per second and it's so cheap and everything else, what benefit will 5G services actually bring to Cambodia? Now, the answer to that is immense. I have a personal view that the government should use 5G to totally digitise the country, bring a lot of new services, applications in, not only just in smart cities, but as you go to the rural areas in terms of agriculture, having a look how we can assist all the manufacturing, the logistics, the healthcare, the education. There's so many emerging services, what we can put here in Cambodia through a 5G platform. The other thing is, especially in the rural areas, because, we want to use the 700 spectrum there, I don't think that will be released for another 2 or 3 years because we haven't turned off the analog channels for TV. And, all the TV stations have got the majority of the 700 spectrum. So the government now has to come up with a solution, how they get that across and how they release it. And, the concerns we have for the Telco Association here, we're already getting mutings coming back from the MPTC. They want to auction spectrum and things like that. This is Cambodia. We're not a huge country like Malaysia or Singapore or Thailand, where they've got huge prices for spectrum auctions. And I think the government got to balance the benefits which 5G can bring in terms of digitization, the Internet of Things, and all the good things what we can do in terms of safety, security, and customer and people welfare, against not trying to get too much for an auction, because 5G is expensive. And that's one of the things, what we have to, we all have boards and we all have shareholders to report to, and we have to get a return on the investment for 5G when we roll it out. We're all ready for 5G. Each of the telcos, we all know, all our network is totally 5G enabled. All our backhaul through the fibre is 5G because we work with Easycom, our sister company. Everything's done ready, and I'm sure the other two are in the same position. It's just we're working closely with the MPTC and TRC to say, come on guys, release the spectrum, let's get it going and start moving, otherwise we'll be left behind.
Fantastic. Calum, maybe you have some insight to add from your work around the world with these sorts of rollouts. And so how can the private sector do more to get the points that Ian were making just there across to government, and by showing benefits? What more do we need to be doing here locally and perhaps in other neighbouring countries to be convincing government, as Ian says, that in order to enjoy these benefits we need some concerted effort, as well as perhaps a revisiting of our pricing models and other aspects of the current 4G setup here, which, as Ian points out, does allow us some of the cheapest data access in the world. So what more does the private sector represented here, what more do we need to be doing?
It's a really good question. For me, I think there are two angles to this. The first is being very clear on the benefits that connectivity, whether 3G, 4G or 5G, can deliver for individuals, communities, and the kind of wider economy as well. So there are countless studies, particularly in relation to the Sustainable Development Goals, around the multiplier effect, the positive multiplier effect of better spectrum allocations, better connectivity provision on things like jobs, investment, inclusion, public service delivery. So really kind of honing in and highlighting those benefits. I think when we talk about the context in Cambodia, looking very much at the kind of more rural setting as well, the kind of realities of delivering some of this connectivity in some of these areas. You have the network infrastructure being rolled out. It is, as Ian mentioned, a not insignificant investment. It's very, very extensive. And highlighting to government how you can kind of be working together around actually getting this into the kind of furthest parts of the country, particularly when we talk about something like 5G, the potential that it could offer. It's really crucial that no one is left behind from that potential. And I think that's very much a kind of conversation between the private sector and government about how the two can work together about delivering that too.
Sure. Maybe, Chan, you can perhaps highlight for us some of that, particularly in your industry, being the payments industry, and one that's already developing quite significantly here. How will 5G influence the payments industry and allow development within the industry to make digital payments even safer, even more secure, and even more accessible to all?
Okay, first and foremost, I would like to add on, 5G is an infrastructure, and to allow this superb infrastructure in action, the entire ecosystem that actually use the 5G has to be ready in a country. For example, in order for the government, like what we are pushing the Malaysian government here, we show that there are so many applications that able to benefit the people as well as the business community if 5G is being rolled out. So in order to demonstrate the benefits that are available, when the moment we tap on 5G, we have to show that what are the supporting ecosystems are ready or not. Take for example payment. You see, the moment 5G is being rolled out in Malaysia, we are looking at seamless payment. Seamless in terms of identification. No longer you need a physical card, neither a handphone to identify yourself, who you are, and so on and so forth. And because of 5G speed is so fast that the camera itself become a main identificator of a person as well as anybody. So the moment they can capture your image, straight away the system will verify you in split seconds that you are who you are, and you can make payment by answering yes or no, and how much is the payment, and so on and so forth. So the 5G definitely going to impact a lot of businesses, as well as a new ecosystem have to be implemented to support the entire 5G infrastructure. This needs a lot of concerted effort, not only from the telco and also from every industry in the country. They have to work hand in hand to actually prove and to show to the government that 5G is in fact is very beneficial to the people, to the commoner, as well as to the business community. So back in Malaysia, we are looking at using camera to identify not just only our facial recognition. We also identify, for example, when you pump petrol. We did this with our national petroleum company called Petronas way back in Malaysia, where the moment you want to refill your fuel in the car, straight away you just press the Settle app, the app called Settle, SETEL, and the Settle will direct you to the nearest Petronas station. And the moment you reach there, you just drive into one of the refueling bay, and you just pick up the pump and you start refilling. And immediately you see the communication. Now it is with 4G. With 5G, the communication will be so seamless that the moment you finish refill your petrol, you can just confirm the amount, and that's it, and you can just drive away. Now that is a very important usage of 5G. And basically, with all this high-speed 5G, you can actually enhance a lot of productivity and also efficiency.
Great, thank you. So, Sanjid, if you were able to get a seat at the table with the TRC or the NTTC, what about your business would you say is being held back by the lack of 5G, for example, rollout, or the lack of planning towards 5G, or a definitive date for the arrival of 5G? What would you tell them about how your business can benefit from 5G and how you're being held back by the current infrastructure?
Thanks for the question. First of all, today's topic is very interesting, which is 5G and blockchain. So what 5G will enable, just Ian told that, it will amplify your total data processing power, data storing power, and also data transmission power. So when you have more power to transmit, process, and actually store the data, then you have more capability to utilize the data. Now, that is when you have the connectivity. So 5G will enable you the most possible connectivity which can have in this world. And after that, on top of that, when blockchain will sit on it, it will actually help to enable the customer services. That means the customer experience or consumer experience, because the products which are currently we are having today, it's based on mainly mobile apps or actually website or any kind of chatbot or any kind of those application related, right? But when that blockchain will be there, so blockchain will enable you to have your own digital account and have your own digital ledger. So when you have your own digital ledger, so you can buy and sell any product you want. If you are living in, say, Honolulu and you want to buy a piece of land in Africa, you can do that on your own. So all those, wonderful things, or what technology can help you. And from our business perspective, where we are coming from, that data and artificial intelligence, we will enable those enterprises and brands to utilize those kind of data and customer data platform to understand the customer behavior in a better way, so that they can process the data and actually provide better consumer experience in case of product and services. So I see an immense, outstanding future where we can contribute together, where the telecommunication service providers, the technology service providers, the agencies, the clients, we all can work together and build a better model for our world.
Well, it's a very compelling case. I hope you do get that seat in front of the MPTC or TLC soon to make that case to them. Vlad, can you expand a bit, particularly for a layman like me? I understand, and I think a lot of people do understand, about how 5G brings benefits through the speed of connectivity and some of the benefits that have been outlined by some of our panelists. But how does, just touching on what Sanjid brought up there, how does blockchain complement that? And give us some insight as to how that kind of linkage between 5G rollout and the wider application of blockchain might look in the future.
Blockchain is still understood by a lot of people like a big mystery, right?
Yeah,
a lot of people still don't understand what it is, or maybe they just think blockchain equals cryptocurrencies, yes. Which is not necessarily true. Cambodia has done quite well on blockchain infrastructure in terms of National Bank of Cambodia, where they already use blockchain, or where is blockchain already used as a solution for Bakong. So I think what we need to understand about blockchain is part of a bigger solution. It's not blockchain would solve the problem by itself, right? What we need is a solution from many elements, and I would say blockchain is one of these elements that can actually help to bring a solution to a problem. If I bring it down to buzzwords like cloud, we had 10 years ago, and right now we have cloud being used everywhere. Cloud is part of the solution. We have cloud infrastructure and technological solution like using mobile applications or backend servers are built on these solutions. They are using cloud infrastructure, right? But it would not be cloud that would be actually solving the problem. It's the overall mobile application that's being developed and using the cloud as on a backend. And it's very similar with blockchain. Blockchain is an element that actually adds security, that adds the decentralization, that doesn't make people depending on a single point of failure. So it makes these solutions that we bring to people more resilient. So what I would like everyone to understand from the broader audience is that blockchain can enhance the solutions we have right now. We don't have to actually change the world to be blockchain, right? Like that doesn't work. What works is adding blockchain as an element to current solutions, or modifying or creating solutions that are using blockchain as one of these elements that actually solves the problem we have.
Can you expand a bit there, Vlad? You mentioned there that the NBC is already using blockchain technology. Do you know what for, and how is that benefiting the nation as a whole?
Right. So to answer this question, it's good to understand that there's actually different kinds of blockchain. You have blockchain like Bitcoin, which is basically based for a cryptocurrency called Bitcoin, right? And that's a decentralized and uncontrolled blockchain network. Then you have blockchains like we are using here in Cambodia, and it's used for corporations and enterprise world, where you have multiple entities which can be benefiting from that kind of distrust in a way, and that's actually using blockchain to implement that trust back to all of them. So blockchain works on something called a consensus, and as long as there is consensus between these different parts of the whole solution of the network, which can be composed by different organizations, these organizations don't really have to trust each other. The blockchain solves that trust problem by having clearly defined consensus that's just being executed when there is data transfer through different nodes. So I would say one of these benefits of the blockchain itself is added security to the banking solutions, and also you don't have to really trust each other in terms of the organizations. Of course, we want to do that, but if you want to make sure that the data is handled correctly, that there is no transactions added, for example, to a bank on your account blockchain helps a lot on that perspective, because you don't need to trust the individuals who are behind handling, let's say, a database, right? There's a blockchain consensus between multiple nodes, which are actually replicating these individual transactions, and they validate these transactions. Therefore, the trust is there.
Okay, thank you. Ian, we talk a lot about, in Cambodia as a developing nation, we talk a lot about leapfrog technology. Where do you see, from what your customers have been telling you, particularly your big corporate customers, where do you see that Cambodia with 5G on board can actually begin to leapfrog past existing technologies into a better future where people are more connected and where blockchain is acting according to that? I mean, is this leapfrog thing a real thing?
Yeah, it is, you know, and just going on what the other panelists said, you know, the blockchain, especially in more emerging markets, which we can adopt here in Cambodia, they're using blockchain for network slicing, they're using it for spectrum sharing. A whole new host of things are coming in where blockchain's being introduced into the 5G world. I know some operators are looking at various blockchains with smart payments and everything, things like roaming and license service access. So this opens the whole new plethora of products, services and everything which we can bring into the market. Now there's two arguments here in Cambodia. Who was actually going to drive the take-up of 5G? Is it going to be the consumer or is it going to be the enterprise market? Now, in terms of leapfrog technology, we're doing a lot of stuff already where we're talking to the big enterprises here and saying, right, what do you expect of a 5G network? Especially in the area of smart manufacturing, smart logistics, agriculture and aquaculture. Now, we may be a bit perverse here in Cambodia with Cellcard because we're looking in other ways, rather from the large corporates, which you know, Julian, here, there's not many of them here. So we're reaching out more into the province, and I think Calum will say this, for the agriculture, the aquaculture, you know, hydroponic farming, you know, water measurement, flood measurement, everything else here, where we're using that 5G technology to maybe leapfrog where we are now, but maybe 4 or 5 years ahead of the game. We're already in conversations with ZTE. You know, we had horrific floods this year, so we're looking at a flood prevention system or monitoring, so we can monitor the floods and give that real time to farmers, consumers, enterprises who've got all facilities out in areas where, you know, they're exposed. In terms of healthcare, you know yourself, one of the things we can leapfrog already is in healthcare. And, you know, I know people say Lao and everything else. Back in March, we did 5G technology with the Ministry of Health for the first COVID monitoring system. So already we're leapfrogging. We've already on a totally different one in terms of tourism, which before COVID was a huge employer here in Cambodia. We've already done virtual reality and augmented reality on Angkor Wat. That's finished. Okay, so it's a very immersive experience in terms of when you come back, or we're trying to get domestic tourists back. So you go to Angkor Wat, you put all this stuff on, you got a very immersive experience. But I think 60% will come from the consumer, 40% will come from the enterprise, and as we start building momentum for 5G and really driving these new technologies, the new 5G ecosystem, what we're going to develop for all Cambodia, we'll start leapfrogging other nations and turn to being a leading light in Asia for 5G adoption and take-up. You know yourself, 60% of the population here is under 30. It's a huge open canvas to really introduce these services. There's no fixed line as such due to the history. Our data usage is crazy. I think one of our average customers uses 800 megabyte of data a day. You know, the corporates use a lot more, and we can start bringing them in. And I think you're on about big data and everything else. EasyCom, our sister company, are looking at world-class data centers. We're looking at data analyzing, data mining, and what we want Cambodia to become is a world-class data center. Things like data mining, data engineering. What India was to call centers, Cambodia will be to data. That's our plan.
Very ambitious. Indeed. Calum, we mentioned earlier that there are 3 cities here in Cambodia that have been identified as being the smart cities of the future. That's Phnom Penh, Battambang and Siem Reap. Obviously, we're going to be slightly lagging in how we get to these cities being as smart as they could be, as long as 5G and 5G is not rolled out. Can you give us some examples from your work around the world of some of the truly radical differences that smart cities are making for people's lives, where they are being enabled to access 5G networks, particularly in the developing world, of course?
Definitely, thank you. So I think from our side, we take quite a broad definition of what a smart city is. So I think historically, smart city has been very much a kind of tech-centric definition. So big data, 5G, IoT, and so on. And there's very much a role for that. But I think what we see a smart city as being is about technology and innovation more broadly as improving lives and livelihoods. And that innovation includes things like indigenous and local knowledge. It includes things like nature-based solutions, behavior change, and so on, as well as things like big data, 5G, IoT, and so on. So when we look at it through that definition, I think pretty much any city can be or is a smart city. So what we're seeing across China, for example, if we're talking about tackling climate change, in China, looking at things like sponge cities, where they are designing natural banking and so on into the city, so that grass and other elements soak up water. In Singapore, we're using big data, IoT, and so on to get to the same kind of endpoint. I think what we do see fundamentally about smart cities, though, is that there is huge potential, as Ian mentioned, around a kind of leapfrogging element as well. So where we see places like Nairobi and others that have leveraged things like mobile payments to really kind of transform the private sector, to transform entrepreneurship, public service delivery, the potential for this has been, and the impact has been enormous. I think one of the kind of risks, though, is that when you leapfrog, you can sometimes skip over some kind of very fundamental and really important foundations that you need to be building out. So, for example, in the context of something like mobile money, it's great like you're extending financial inclusion, but then some of the infrastructure that would usually be piggybacking on traditional financial services, whether it's things like fixed line, education, or other kind of hard infrastructure, sometimes gets forgotten about. So I think leapfrogging is very, very important to be doing, but we also need to make sure it's holistic, it's inclusive, and we're not forgetting kind of fundamentals that otherwise we would be addressing. But I think smart cities, there's enormous potential for this in a developing context. And we are seeing that happening across the region, across sub-Saharan Africa, and globally as well.
So when we talk about smart cities, I mean, we were also seeing examples around the world of smart nations and nations where people are able to adopt digital citizenships. I'm thinking of Estonia in particular as somewhere that's been truly leading the line. How do you see, for a country larger than Cambodia, more developed than Cambodia, like Malaysia, how do you see digital citizenship being encouraged, being taken on there, and how do you see that's going to develop into the future? Again, perhaps to give us a more insightful look into the crystal ball from Phnom Penh.
Okay, this is a very good insight. I'm glad you asked this question. Now, this COVID-19 have bring a lot of nations into a very innovative state. In Malaysia, we roll out this apps called My Sejahtera. My Sejahtera apps is an apps where every Malaysian or everybody who reside in Malaysia have to register yourself wherever you go, the shops that you enter and places that you visited, what time and where, and so on and so forth. Now that apps, and because of COVID-19, the behavior, human being, the Malaysian behavior have to change towards that. We have to conform to that behavior in order for us to go out and shop and go out to dine and go out from our house and our offices. Now that behavior, to me, is the, I would say, the first step towards digital identity. Now, first and foremost, every one of us, whether you are Malaysian or you are residents in Malaysia, as long as you live in Malaysia, you need to register yourself. Now, coupled with 5G, the power of 5G, because of the speed and its capacity and so forth. Now, it allows a lot of KYC as well as a lot of identification, confirmation, verification process is all being done in split second. That is a very important infrastructure in order to make a digital identity works. Now, digital identity, you don't just look at your face and we know that you are Malaysian. Behind the scene, the entire backend system need to verify where are you from, how old are you, what is your gender, and so forth. Now, that need a lot of speeds, and the entire ecosystem, include government sector, private sector, all those agencies that reside within this country have to be connected. And the only way to have such a high-speed verification is through 5G. Now, let me share with you, beyond just digital identity, even payment itself can be so innovative that you can buy something through loan. There are many banks or financial institutions who want to give you financing. Imagine yourself, you walk into a shop that you want to buy this iPhone Pro Max 12 that costs you, let's say, $2,000 US or $3,000 US, and you can't afford it, and based on your bank account balance or your credit card balance, you only got $1,000 US, so you need to loan $2,000. Now, with split second, the system can actually analyze your credit standing, your whether how much a company would want to loan you to buy that particular phone. So all this can be done instantaneously with this 5G, and with that you can just select, okay, you want to buy which bank. Let's say the bank A want to provide you this loan at what interest rate, what is the cost of the loan, and so on and so forth. So it's all done at the point of purchase. Now that is very innovative. So there are many other innovation can be done, and smart city need this kind of innovation. Not just only payment, how about transportation, with digital identity. We are basically magically we can move within the digital space or the smart city seamlessly, whether physically when you move, as well as electronically when you want to move funds, or want to make payment, and want to do analysis, and so on and so forth. So it's all done within the digital identity, but speed, of course, blockchains will even enhance the security as well as the transaction security, and so on and so forth. So all this, if you look on a holistic perspective, it makes sense with the high speed, with the smart city, seamless payment. There you go. That's where we call we are living in a digital space.
Sanjid, Ian mentioned earlier, talking about Cambodia's ambitions to become what India was to call centers perhaps 10, 15 years ago. Now, in your business, obviously, big data and cloud computing are very essential kind of, it's essential that you access them. I'm sure everyone on this panel is aware that the government currently is debating a national internet gateway, similar to the one that China imposes on its internet traffic in and out of the country. How do you see that impacting investment decisions or your ability, and Ian, I'll also ask you about that. How do you see that impacting, the investment decisions that you might be making, the ability to run your business to its optimal capacity, when we have kind of a single point of, Mr. Chan spoke earlier about how blockchain is actually supposed to, and Vladimir also, about how blockchain is supposed to eliminate single point failures, whereas what we're potentially doing with a national internet gateway is embedding a single point of failure inside a government-controlled data center, for example. How is that going to impact the investment decisions that your company is going to make going forward, do you think?
Thanks for the question, Julian. I think it's a very good question. And first of all, I think from a policy perspective, like when Vladimir shared that Cambodia has already made the first step in the blockchain structure, so which is a very great advantage. And Ian shared that all the telcos are ready to operate on a 5G spectrum. So that means we are in a very good shape from a policy perspective. Now, putting in this national internet gateway and it's like we don't have time to make silo planning or silo policy making. So when you are thinking about the broader picture that we are considering the infrastructure point of view, we have to consider all this application point of view. Like Ian mentioned, that 40% can be coming up from enterprise and 60% is coming up from consumer perspective. So it's actually whatever application you build, whatever infrastructure you are going to build, ultimately that's going to be consumed by the consumers, whether it's an end consumer or an enterprise consumer. So from our company perspective, that when we coming back to providing the solutions to the enterprises, and ultimately enterprises are providing the solution to the consumers, all depends upon how those infrastructure has been made and how those policies has been built in different countries across different verticals, whether it's horizontal or vertical. So then the main point of view here is we have to really make the policies very clearly. Like Vladimir mentioned, there has been some problem solving and single point of contact, a single error based solution already implemented. So we have to expand those capabilities in different aspects. Similarly, when it comes to the connectivity issue, we have to we have to connect the dots within the 5G infrastructure. And then we have to decide whether this national internet gateway, whether it will help or how it can help or where it can help. So all these things we need to closely monitor and consciously think about.
Vlad, thank you, Sanjid. Vlad, you do quite a lot of consultancy with large companies. If you were asked that question about how the NIG, the National Internet Gateway, might impact investment decisions, how would you be answering that?
I think Sanjid had a very good point. He mentioned about a single point of failure. I think this is a big concern from big companies. If you have an international company and then there is like a single point of failure on a national level, then it definitely impacts how the infrastructure has to be built. So on it has a big impact on the technical solution, how that is made. We have to be answering questions like, does Cambodia itself has enough data centers to support the solutions to be localized? Because if they are not, then just single point of failure in terms of the international gateway, right, that you mentioned, might be actually preventing users to get their, to have their solutions working.
Because so we know that cloud companies like Amazon and Google will not be putting major data centers in countries that operate behind gateways.
Right, and as you mentioned, like companies like Amazon. I mean, if you are using right now a cloud solution, most likely the cloud solutions in Cambodia are based on servers in Singapore. How is that going to work? Like all these are questions that have to be actually answered in advance before we start closing the borders. I think Cambodia, I like Cambodia how open it is. Yeah, Cambodia is an open country. It's learning. There's a huge curve of growth in Cambodia. And if you want to make this economy prosperous and growing, we should look on how to actually give companies the tools and the environment that will allow them to grow. I see that there is a concern of possible burden on the infrastructure level, which can actually make some of the companies rethink if they want to actually, right, if they would really want to have these solutions built for Cambodia, or if they want to include Cambodia in their investment portfolio and, in terms of country, like expanding their branches, if there's international profile, right?
Sure. Okay, sorry, carry on. Sorry.
Right. So I see that would be like the biggest concern in terms of like the ecosystem, the environment. I would like to see Cambodian ecosystem and the ecosystem that is provided to the companies entering Cambodia, or actually Cambodian companies to go outside, to be without this concern of how is it going to work? Should I wait until next year until it's more clear, or should I wait until next 2 years? This can be actually slowing down the growth of Cambodia. And as we all know, right now in the COVID-19, there is no slowdown. I mean, there's no time to lose for growth, right? It's because everything is on stall for now.
Sure. Yeah. Indeed. Okay, I've just been told we've got this. This has been such a fascinating discussion that the time has quite flown by. So I've been told that we've got 5 minutes left. So can each of you just quickly sum up from your current assessment of the landscape here in Cambodia? Which local companies, obviously Cellcard and ADA, we take that as a given. But which local companies and in which sectors are those companies most likely to benefit? And where do you think the gaps will remain that international companies will need to plug to make sure that the development is carried on consistently and sustainably? Ian, if I could ask you to keep it brief, but tell me who do you see the winners and the losers being in kind of the race to 5G and blockchain?
Well, I think, I've got to say Cellcard and the telcos as well, but I think the ISPs. I think one thing what people got to realise about 5G, it's all about partnerships. Okay, the telcos can't do it on their own, and they've got to go into partnerships with governments, industries, with education authorities, payment platforms, everything. And unless we all build this national ecosystem, having this open partnership, this open cooperation to actually roll out a robust, safe, secure, fast and consistent network, 5G won't work in Cambodia. The winners will be everybody if we get it right. And there's got to be a huge amount of consolidation, a huge amount of cooperation, and a huge amount of dialogue, especially with the government, especially taking your last week, Julian, what everybody said about this national interest.
Sure.
That could curtail everything what we're trying to do from driving a digital society.
Indeed. Calum, from your experience around the world, where do you see international companies competing with local companies for success in smaller emerging markets, and where have you assessed winners and losers in that kind of showdown?
Yes, I think to echo a point from Ian, ecosystem is very much the big word here. So when we see things like the digital economy, emerging technology and so on, there is a real opportunity to kind of democratize some of these industries. So in terms of something like AI or machine learning, we're seeing more and more startups come into the fore. We're seeing really exciting things around blockchain and so on in many, many markets. I think Cambodia is positioned very, very well, as we talked about. You have a young demographic, you have a highly educated population, you have a tech-savvy population. It's very much, as you mentioned, that kind of ecosystem aspect. Like, how do we get government, the private sector, academia in particular as well, working together to make this happen? And I think the kind of international and regional perspective there is incredibly important, because there's no way you can kind of constrain that growth. It's very much to get kind of a regional or wide.
Fantastic, thanks. Chan, obviously Malaysian companies have a lot of investment here in the tech space through Smart Axiata and ADA amongst others. So where do you see international sort of local competition versus cooperation? How's that all going to play out, particularly as things accelerate with 5G and the adoption of blockchain?
Okay, particularly in payment, we will see that working with the local company is a must, because localization of payment is a must. Especially in payment, we are very much compliant. We need to comply with the Payment Act, the Financial Services Act, Anti-Money Laundering Act, and so on and so forth. Therefore, we need to work rather than compete with the local company. And I believe the market in Cambodia, we need to understand the local culture as much as the importance of technology. And right from the start, we always believe that choosing the local partner and collaborate with the local ecosystem is very important to determine success for foreign company like us investing into Cambodia. And we have adopted the model since day one we enter Cambodia, and our partnership works very well. We work very well with banks from Cambodia, like Canadian Bank, we just name it, we work with them. Even Malaysian banks, we work with them, and any corporation, including the Smart Telco that is owned by Smart, is owned by Axiata, and so on and so forth. So working within the ecosystem is a very important approach in Cambodia.
Thanks, Jim. Sanjid and Vlad, if I could ask you to keep it very brief, but if you could just sum up and talk to the future and how you see it all playing out. It's difficult to be brief on that particular topic, but if you could have a go, thanks.
Fine. Thanks, Julian. And first of all, I want to thank everyone for a wonderful session. So from my perspective, I see three important points what we need from local and any companies who are actually, there are more companies that are coming in investing in Cambodia. So one is SST tech or tech, which is Ian already mentioned that there are tech infrastructure and all those points. Secondly, there is skills and talents that we build, that is education sector and all those local resources has to be there. And finally, proper data center and infrastructure from a broader perspective, which is Vladimir has also covered, like blockchain and all those infrastructure points. I think these are the three core points which will actually help, whether it's a local or a foreign company, grow and flourish in Cambodia.
Brilliant. Thank you. Vlad, quickly in summation, thank you.
Thank you, Julian. As Sanjid mentioned before, Cambodia is in a good shape in leapfrogging some of these solutions that we had in the old world. We have gone into full-blown 4G mobile networks with having access at the villages with amazing speeds and 10 gigabytes of data for $1. I mean, that's a great accessibility of internet connection for everyone. I think this is something which is making it much easier for people to actually really get involved, start using mobile applications, have the digital economy actually growing and growing. So I'm very excited actually about Cambodia being on that step, and 5G is something which can actually even enhance that space. I also see that possibility for cooperation between companies, and obviously we are also very happy to help with the consultations and any ways how we can help in the Cambodian market.
Excellent. End on a business pitch. I love it, Vlad. Thank you so much, one and all. This has been a really fascinating session. It's great to gather so much expertise together in one place. And please stay safe and stay well. And thanks again for being a part of this World FinTech Festival Cambodia panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julian.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Julian.
Hi, it's good to meet you all.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks, guys.